My name is Justin Fisher, and this is War Whiskey Podcast. I have Mr. Paul Garrett with us. Today is 13 July 2020, and we are at the Jacksonville Museum of Military History. Paul, thank you for coming on the show.
Well, Justin, thank you for having me.
Paul, give us a little background of you. Where were you born?
I was born in Holland, Arkansas, a small community north of Conway in Faulkner County. Lived there till I was about 3 years old, and my family moved to Rosebud, Arkansas, which is up in White County.
Okay.
And that's where I grew up.
All right. What did your parents do for a living?
My mother was a housewife,
Okay.
and my dad farmed.
All right. Have any siblings?
I did. I had an older brother and a younger brother.
Okay. Did you have any jobs before entering the service, or did you enter right after high school?
No, I bounced around a little bit. I worked for Wine Gardens grocery company at that time. It had grocery stores in the North Little Rock area. Also worked for the Pulaski County Road Crew for a while, and just things that an uneducated high school graduate could do.
Where did you graduate high school from?
Rosebud High School.
Rosebud High School. Okay, so you graduated high school. You had a few jobs, and what made you join the military?
My family had a history of serving.
Okay.
I had uncles that was in World War II, uncles that was in Korea, a brother that was in Korea, cousins that was between Korea and Vietnam, and then I had cousins in Vietnam. So it was just something that I always felt that that I needed to do, just to do my part.
Okay. So what year was it when you joined?
I joined in 1965.
1965, all right. Walk me through that day. How'd you do it?
Well, I had a cousin that we ran around a lot together, and on weekends, of course, we'd make all the joints around town in Little Rock. And so in talking, I said, I think I'm going to join the military. He said, oh, yeah, I'll join too. So I had in the back of my mind all this time that I'd probably join the Marine Corps. And I think he didn't think we were going down to join the Marine Corps, but I picked him up at his house one afternoon, and he thought we were headed to the Little Rock Inn to have a cold one or two, and we wound up at the Marine Corps recruiter.
That's a weird turn right there, isn't it?
He never forgave me for that.
So you joined the Marine Corps. When did you, from the time you enlisted to shipped out, how long was that?
Less than a month.
Wow.
Of course, at that time, that was 1965.
Okay.
Vietnam was just beginning to heat up a little bit. 1965 was when we first sent combat troops other than just advisors into country. So I guess they were feeling the pinch for manpower. So it was probably early, it may have been late May when I actually enlisted, and then in June I was on my way to boot camp.
Any particular reason why you picked the Marine Corps?
Well, I guess it was one of those factors where when you're that age, 18, 19-year-old boy,
right,
you think you're pretty tough. And everybody that I talked to said, oh, you don't want to join the Marine Corps. You need to either go in the Air Force, go in the Navy, do something.
Yeah.
Do something, just don't join the Marine Corps. And the more they said that, the more in the back of my mind I thought, I'm joining the Marine Corps.
So that kind of forbidden fruit just pushed you towards it, huh?
It did.
Where did you go to boot camp at?
I went to boot camp at Parris Island. Normally, everybody west of the Mississippi that joins Marine Corps goes to MCRD San Diego.
Right.
But there was about 6 or 8 of us that joined in this time period, and our recruiter said, "Oh, by the way, you guys are the chosen ones. Instead of going to MCRD San Diego, you're going to get to go to Parris Island, MCRD Parris Island, South Carolina." So we got to go to Parris Island.
What was that like from leaving Arkansas and going to Parris Island? What was that whole experience like?
We flew out of Little Rock,
Right.
first time on an airplane.
Mm-hmm.
Flew into Atlanta and then on into Savannah, Georgia.
Right.
And there we bussed up to Beaufort, South Carolina, which is the town right outside of Parris Island. And that's where they picked us up, the Marine Corps recruit depot there. Had a bus that picked up recruits there at the bus station. And as per usual, it seemed like inevitably you wind up arriving about midnight.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, we had a greeting committee.
What was that like?
Well, let's say that I grew up on the farm,
Mm-hmm.
and I'd heard a lot of colorful language my whole life.
Right.
I'd been talked to in not mild terms before, but it was a shock when those drill instructors met us. I remember when we left Beaufort, we got on the Marine Corps bus.
Mm-hmm.
I'd heard that we better smoke a cigarette, because if you smoke, you probably wasn't going to get smoked for 2 or 3 days. And as it turned out, that 2 or 3 days was 13 weeks.
Wow.
But so this cousin that went in with me and we went to the back of the bus so we could sit back there and smoke that last cigarette. So when that bus rolled up there and that DI stepped up on that bus with that Smokey Bear hat on, he started telling everybody to get off, and in no uncertain terms, get off and get off now. So we started down the aisle. Of course, we were the last ones in the back of the bus. We were the last ones in line. Well, when my foot was just about to hit that bottom step, he reached out there and got me right there by the shoulder, and I landed about 10 feet over there in the grass, and there was 2 more over there telling me that what I better do, get off of their Marine Corps grass. So it was a rude awakening from the minute I arrived.
A little different than being on the farm, huh?
It was definitely different down on the farm.
So this is just reception.
That's correct.
So what was the reception experience like? You're not even down range yet.
No. Everybody's screaming and hollering.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, you've got no idea how to get in formation. You got no idea how to march, but you better be trying. And the one thing that they let you know in a hurry is you keep your head and eyes straight to the front. You don't be eyeballing anybody or anything. You're looking straight ahead. And I don't know exactly what all of the paperwork type stuff that they got done that night. I just remember that it was we probably got there about midnight. It was probably about 2:30 before they let us hit the rack. And then reveille went at about 04:30 that first morning, and that reveille was them throwing a trash can down the middle of that squad bay, and about 4 of them there screaming and hollering. And this is all in reception.
Right.
And so you get hustled out. Again, like I said, you don't know how to get in formation, but you better be trying to do something that what you think it might be like. They herded us down to the chow hall, I guess, and then back to getting our issue of utilities. And the one good piece of advice I got before I left, they had somebody that had been in ahead of us,
Right.
said, whatever you do, don't take anything with you. Don't take shaving gear, don't take any extra clothes. So that's just going to be something that you're going to have to send back, and it's just going to be more stuff for you to have to deal with. So I didn't have anything with me. That was fortunate. Drew our what the Marine Corps called a utility uniform, which was at that time was just plain green, what the Army'd call dungarees or BDUs. I guess.
BDUs, okay.
Yeah. And of course they shaved their heads.
Right.
Very first thing, and then they start shots. Filling out paperwork that I still don't have any idea, like where your next of kin could be notified and all kind of stuff like that. Then that probably about 4 o'clock that afternoon, you're picked up by your regular training platoon, DIs, who's going to put you through the 13 weeks boot camp. And then that's where the real fun starts.
So how long were you in reception for?
Probably about a day.
Really?
Day and a half. They didn't mess around. No.
So you got there. You went to bed about 2:30. Got up at 4:30. In the afternoon, you were with your.
They picked our regular DIs picked us up late that afternoon for our regular training battalion.
Was there a difference in the DIs at reception and downrange? Or were they all just angry?
They were all angry.
Yeah. Okay.
They all had an attitude. They all looked like some of the meanest people I'd ever laid eyes on.
Could you? Yeah, I think that's part of the job requirement.
Right.
Could you tell the difference from when you left reception to going downrange? Was there like, oh wow, here I am right now?
The difference was, you knew this set of DIs told you what you were going to do, what they were going to do to you, and who they were. They were your mother, your father, your girlfriend, whatever. For the next 13 weeks, we're the ones that's going to be there, And then they let you know that they were at the end of that 13 weeks. You wasn't going to be the worm you were when you come in, or the maggot. That was one of their favorite terms, was maggots. And you learned real quick, just because you'd signed that dotted line and arrived at boot camp, you were not a Marine.
Right.
So, but you could tell some difference. They had a personal investment, whereas the people at receptions was running hundreds at this time, hundreds of recruits.
On down the line.
So, and these guys, which I didn't know at the time, but these guys are graded on how well they train you, what you turn into at the end of that 13 weeks.
Give me so we've been there for reception for a day. Now we're in our basically almost a full day. Now we're at our training platoon. Give me that first full day at the training platoon. What was that like?
The things I can remember now was you had to learn how to get in platoon formation.
Right.
And they lined you up into columns, 4 columns, and they used the tallest men at the head of the column, and they went down toward the back.
Okay.
And you had to know the man ahead of you and the one behind you, so you would know how to line up each day. And they almost immediately they start teaching you things like getting in formation, dress right dress, cover down dress right. Then you begin to learn basic moves for marching or close order drill as you go to different classrooms where they're going to teach you other things that you have to know. But they spend a lot of time those first few days on looking like a military unit when you're out there, when you fall out. And that's another thing you had to, you learn when they said fall out, what you were supposed to do. I mean,
Right.
we're just green farm boys or whatever, wherever we're from, so we know nothing about the military.
A lot of hard life lessons learned in those 4 days.
There is.
Yeah.
In a hurry.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. What was your most vivid memory during that time?
During
Basic
the
training.
early days?
Right. During the basic training.
Oh, or just
Or
during
boot
the basic
camp.
training.
Yeah.
Boot camp. Well, I can remember early on,
All right.
we learned, it became obvious that, like I said, I had that cousin and we went in together.
Okay.
But we learned that the best thing to do was not let anybody know that you had a relative there. That was just not.
Now, did you leave a girlfriend or anything else you had, or you
I didn't.
just brought your cousin with you?
That's it.
Okay.
At that time.
Undercover cousin.
Undercover.
Right.
Undercover.
Okay.
I remember the first day, the first weekend we're there on a Sunday. They have us out there in front of the barracks
Mm-hmm.
with a pair of scissors cutting grass.
With scissors.
With scissors. We're down there on our knees, and you don't say a word to anybody. You don't talk, And this cousin of mine, he's here and I'm there, and he said, whispers, he said, if I ever get a hold of you, I'm going to kill you for dragging me into this. That was one of my memories. Then, of course, your memories change as you progress.
Right.
Another thing that sticks out is I remember first chow hall experience.
Oh, yeah.
We marched to chow hall. You stand out there in platoon formation till they tell you to move in. And these DIs seem like that they were all just, this, again, I guess this goes to part of the thing you had to be, but they were all comedians. I mean, they were all had some of the funniest lines that you ever seen. You just couldn't laugh.
Right.
And I remember the DIs saying, all right, all you walking Dempsey dumpsters to the rear of the chow line. That was the fat bodies,
Yeah.
Well, the first time he said that, I thought that was really funny.
In the chow line, he thought that was funny.
I thought it was funny, but while everyone else went in the chow hall, I was out in the street doing bend and thrust. So that was the last time I laughed.
And for people who don't know, you don't talk in the chow line.
No,
you don't talk. You just move when they tell you to move.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah, you don't breathe hardly in the chow line.
And you sidestep. You don't say, I want some of this, or don't.
There's not a selection. You just get what they give you.
You get what, and then you go to each group was assigned to be at the same table as you learn.
Right.
But you don't just get your tray and walk over there and sit down. You get over there and you stand with your tray until everybody gets there, and the DI gets ready for you to sit down. And he gives you the command, ready, seat. When he says that, you don't no more, and your butt don't no more hit the seat until he hollers, starts screaming, get up, get up, get up. You're too slow.
Yeah.
So you do that you got about 15 or 20 minutes to eat anyway. That's about all they figure, about 20 maybe. But you spend 10 of it
standing
learning
up.
how to sit down at the table. So you learn pretty quick that you eat what you can. And then when he says move, it don't matter if you're not through. You're out of there, and the rest that goes in the GI can on the way out.
Some of the hungriest times you'll be in your life is waiting in a chow line.
Oh,
because you can smell it and you can't get up there on it.
That's right. Right. That's right.
Yeah, you don't feed you. They never feed you enough. No. Go ahead, sir.
Oh, and I was just going. A couple of the other things I remember was the Marine Corps. They stress a competition, of course,
right.
which is probably the same through all the services.
Uh-huh.
But the two things that you really needed to be able to do was shoot your rifle. You had to be, they wanted you to qualify. They did not like people to go unqualified with a rifle. And they wanted you to be able to march,
Right.
close order drill. And there was always a competition at the end of boot camp between training platoons. And they had streamers, went on the guide on. That became very important. You know how your life changes when you're in this environment for 13 weeks. Things that you wouldn't think about before are important. And getting that streamer on your guide on was important.
Right.
So you had better be able to march in step. And the first week we were there, of course, you can't march.
Not at all.
But some of these platoons that had been on the island for 8-9 weeks, you could hear them coming. You know, in boot, when that left heel hit, you could hear it even without them calling cadence. You know, they were in time, in step, and that DI'd have you stand out there and watch, and he said, "Now that's what Marines sound like. You sound like a bunch of maggots crawling around out here, you know." So they give you an idea of what you were aiming at.
They still put you all in a parade field, right?
They did.
Yeah. There's
always
There's always people watching the parade field. So even if the DI doesn't see you, if you mess up in the back, somebody's gonna catch you.
Oh yeah.
That's like one of the worst places to be.
Because
everybody drives by or stands out there and watches it.
Right. Yeah. I remember that was another thing they told us when we got there on the island. They said, "There's one way on and one way off of this island. And if anybody comes, we know it before they get there. So if any congressman or anybody else like that comes, we'll know they're here before you do. So you're ours as long as for this 13 weeks, you belong to us."
Wow.
So
was there a transition from basic training to some specialized or advanced training?
there was.
Okay.
We during basic training, we went to the rifle range.
Right.
So we spent 3 weeks on the rifle range to learn how to shoot and to qualify.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing you learn at the rifle range, the cardinal sin was to have an unsafe weapon.
Oh, yes.
And an M14 was what we had in boot camp. An M14, to be considered a safe weapon by their standards, had to have the bolt locked to the rear with an empty magazine inserted and a safety on.
Okay.
And if they ever caught you with a rifle that was not in that condition, one of those things was not right, everybody in that platoon paid for it because they stressed that so hard. And I remember one day at the chow hall at the rifle range, they had several platoons or even different battalions training at the rifle range at the same time. So we were at the chow hall, and this other platoon was there, and this DI was dressing down this recruit because he had a M14 with a bolt home, which is easy to forget if you're not
right.
You know,
absolutely.
So he's tearing him up about that bolt being home, and he had that rifle. The DI took that rifle away from him, and he racked that bolt back, and a live round came out. And oh my gosh, the last time I saw that recruit, he was in the middle of about 4 big DIs, and I thought they were going to kill that kid before he got out of there. That was the thing I remember from that. But the transition, like you were asking there, the actual infantry fire maneuvers and different infantry things that you need to learn, you didn't really, other than learning how to shoot and qualifying in boot camp, we did that other. We went to Camp Geiger, North Carolina. Camp Geiger is actually a part of Camp Lejeune. It's for training. And the Second Marine Division at that time, the Second Marine Division was stationed at Camp Lejeune. We called that where they were at Mainside, and then you had Geiger where all the training was at. And you had ITR, which is Infantry Training Regiment, and ACT, which was Advanced Combat Training, that you had to go through after you got out of boot camp.
Now, did you keep the same DIs?
No.
So you got brand new set of DIs?
Right.
So they did a handoff?
They did. They considered, when you left boot camp, you were a Green, all right, but you were supposedly a Marine at that time. So when we got to Camp Geiger, we had what they call troop handlers.
Okay.
Marine Corps boot camp, you didn't get any kind of leave, no liberty whatsoever, nothing for 13 weeks. When we got to ITR, if things went just right, you might get liberty on if you weren't the duty platoon, maybe on Saturday.
Really?
Saturday evening and something like that. You got a little bit more relaxed, I'd say, when you got there. And you went to a lot of classes.
Right.
And the cardinal sin there was you were training, when you went into that training cycle, you trained probably 16, 18 hours a day. And so you get in one of those classroom settings, they call it, which was out in the boonies. It was easy if somebody was up there lecturing to go to sleep.
Ooh.
Big mistake. You get in more trouble for going to sleep during one of those lectures. That was something that sort of I remember real well. Plus, there at Geiger, the heads, which I guess the Army would refer to as latrines, the head was not in the squad bays.
Right.
They were out separate. And I don't care what time you got up. You could get up at 2 o'clock in the morning and go out there and all the hot water was gone. I took more cold showers there than I ever did in my life.
It'd wake you up, though, wouldn't it?
It would.
Yeah, I know when I went through Army basic training, your drill sergeants stayed with you as you went into advanced individual training. So I had the same drill sergeants all the way through.
All the way through.
Only thing that changed for us was we had different types of cadre when we went to these ranges to do, the infantry stuff. You had more of that. Is it something similar to what y'all had? Yes. So you saw more of Marines, different types of Marines out there. Yeah.
They had Marine instructors.
Right, yes.
At each different, whatever. Say you were working compass reading.
Right.
Back when I was in, it was you had to be able to read a map and a compass, and we didn't really have a GPS and stuff of that nature at that time. And that was something you had to learn. You'd go on these night patrols, and the Marine Corps breaks their units down in platoons, squads, and then we break down further to fire teams. Each squad in a Marine Corps rifle company has 3 fire teams. So that's about 4 people. That's what it should be, unless you have a crew serve weapon attached to your fire team, which when you get out in the real world, out in combat, you did. But so you would break these down, and whoever the fire team leader was for that night would have to take that compass, and you had certain points that you had to show up. You had to go from one place to the other, and you had to do it by compass at night and stuff like that.
So
that was one of the classes.
Just to clarify, the Marine Corps squads had 3 fire teams in it of 4 people. So 12 people per squad. Is that?
And a squad leader.
And a squad leader. So you had 13 in there.
Right.
Okay.
That's a rifle. And like I said,
right.
you get into actual where you're in combat. Marine Corps company has 4 platoons, 3 rifle platoons, and a weapons platoon. The weapons platoon is made up of a machine gun section, 3.5 rocket section, and a 60 mortar section.
Right.
At that time. Now I'm sure things have
changed. Yeah.
changed.
But then that's how it
since
was
then.
set
But
up.
at that time period, that was what it was. So they would assign. Usually, they would always break out the guns, where you'd have a machine gun with each fire team,
Mm-hmm.
and of course, a machine gunner would have an ammo humper, or an A gunner and an ammo humper.
Right.
Usually, a gun team had at least 3 people. Ideally, maybe 4 if you'd have 2 ammo humpers. But and they would break that out, and then usually they would break out the 3.5 rockets to each squad.
Mm-hmm.
That was sort of like, we called it the platoon leader's personal artillery.
Right.
And then the 60 mortar section usually stayed under the command of the company commander. That was his personal
Yeah, company mortars.
artillery.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Company mortars.
Yep.
So that was basic there. So you did all this. Different Marines be stationed at different, depending on what you were learning. Like rifle, like infantry fire maneuver.
Mm-hmm.
You had to learn how to advance by fire maneuver, how to use hand signals when you couldn't talk, and
Yeah.
stuff like that.
What is your DIs doing during all this?
Good question.
So like a lot of ours did the training, like conducted it, but usually like if it's it was like a range, like especially like a grenade 203,
Right.
M203, or a the 240 was replaced to 60. If it was one of those ranges, you didn't see the drill instructor or
Yeah.
drill sergeant on the Army side.
Right, and that's the way they stepped aside. You had fire direction. What did they call them? Anyway, they had special trainers that when you went to one of those ranges where
Right.
it was live fire, then you became you were under his command, and your drill instructors, or at this time as troop handler,
Mm-hmm.
he steps aside because he turns you over to whoever's running that range. Say it was M60s or we did some with 50 cals
Okay.
and different things like that. But
During so you're doing 16 to 18-hour days.
right,
What was the final event, the culminating event that you guys had to do in order to graduate and become a full-fledged Marine?
basically it was you were graded all the way through this. Whoever say I'm the range director for M60s. He gives that your DI or your handler there. He gets a report,
Mm-hmm.
grades on how you handled each range,
Right.
and at the end of that, then if you were outstanding, usually the one that was outstanding in each squad was promoted to PFC.
Mm-hmm.
And you had some ceremony like that, but we didn't have an actual test just one day of
Okay.
doing this or doing that. Your test consisted of doing it over a period of time, I guess.
Okay.
You'd say.
Yeah. Okay. So you didn't have like a crucible. I think that's what they call it now.
Okay. No. Not
Yeah. And when I went through, we did. You road marched out. I think it was like 12 miles. You did just training. Then you did your 25-miler back, and that was kind of like your culminating event.
Okay. Now we had that in boot camp.
Oh, so you had that in boot camp.
Yeah.
Okay.
Forced march, they call ours. Forced march.
Yeah. And we got back. We had a ceremony where you got to drink grog, and you were infantry, per the standard basically. You get your blue cord and all that stuff
Right.
for us.
Right.
So y'all didn't have that. Y'all just pretty much just kept testing all the way through. And
Right.
what was graduation like?
Well, our boot leave was going to immediately follow that. So
Mhm.
everybody, it was very exciting. Of course, at the time, we had just changed over to winter uniforms, was dress greens.
Right.
And of course, you have your inspection, and then the people gets called up that's going to be promoted to PFC,
Mm-hmm.
and get a few words from your battalion training commander, which is usually a colonel or a light colonel or something like that. And then you get head out on your, basically you have orders for, that allow you to go home for, I think it was 15 days, boot leave they called it, which was big, big, big.
Well, so you've gone through all this stuff. I mean, we're talking 13 weeks. Um, was it hard to transition to that? When you look back on it, was it hard for you to go from farm life to marine life at this point?
It was hard for the first 2 weeks.
Okay.
After that, most, especially, now this is probably a little bit of prejudice coming through, but it seemed like the boys from the South, you know, Arkansas,
Right.
Louisiana, Tennessee, Alabama, Georgia, they were all mostly farm boys or coming from smaller towns, and they adjusted to that kind of life better, seemed me like, than the boys from Chicago and New York. And
So I've heard that argument too. When I went through basic training, I've heard that same argument before. I don't know if it's just
it may be a attitude.
probably. It probably is. Was it? Did you have a surreal? So you finished basic training, or you're a Marine now? Is it pretty surreal?
Yeah,
Very surreal moment right there.
very surreal, but it was also extremely. You were extremely proud.
Right.
I'm sure you've heard the expression, you know, on that Eagle, Globe, and Anchor.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's earned, not given. And I'm sure there's things the Army has their whatever symbols, but you feel that sense of accomplishment that you know, this time when you go through that bus depot or that air terminal, you got on that uniform and you feel like, you know, I've earned this, I've done something. So you feel a lot of pride.